So, as promised, I am coming to you today to deliver the first of a 5-part video series. My name is Tara Palaki, and today I will be sharing with you information that's really going to help you to support getting to know yourself. In my clinic, when I'm working with women, and this is my own personal journey too, this isn't something that I've just observed in others, but it's very, very true for me. We've been surrounded by huge amounts of miseducation around being a woman in our bodies. And actually, I know this was my truth, the information, the education that I'd received, or the messages that were available to me about my body were actually messages that had built up over a lifetime and were really, really destructive for me, to the point where actually they were slowly killing me. So this has then become something where I have gone on a massive journey over the last couple of years to be able to find out lots of information for myself, and now I'm in a position where I'm paying it forward and sharing it with all of you wonderful ladies. So this is the first video, and this is going to be setting up a bit about the biology as to what goes on within our bodies each month, and that's wonderfully going to lead the way then for when I start to talk about the theory of how we can work with our biology, what's actually going on within our body, so that we can have a much more productive and fulfilling life and really embrace being the woman that we can be, that we are, because we're goddamn amazing. And this is the place where I want to be sharing with you some of the skills and techniques that you could be using, and it really does start with education. So this is, today I'm going to be talking you through, like I'd already alluded to, the biology of your body, and in particular our hormone system. Now we have, for those of you who aren't overly aware of our hormone or our endocrine system, this is a magnificent chemical messaging system that starts from our brain and goes all throughout our body. It's responsible for keeping us alive. It's responsible for making sure that our brain has enough food so it can function. It's responsible for a survival mechanism. So rather than us being able to just go, oh, I can't deal with this, if we see an alligator, actually we've got all the adequate response for us to either fight it or to be able to run away. And that's for the big things in our life, such as alligators chasing us, right the way through to the stressful boss or the stressful relationship that we may be in. It helps, our hormone systems help to regulate our sleep, they regulate our metabolism, and what I mean by that is how the food that we eat is changed into fuel and how we burn that within our body. And it's also responsible for our reproduction, which is what we're going to be focusing on in much greater detail. Our reproduction is not alone. So like I've already described all of these functions, our reproduction should never be seen in isolation. Our hormone system talks from our brain, which is starts with the pituitary gland, and starts to talk through our thyroid, our pancreas, which sits just underneath our rib cage, our adrenals, which sit just above our kidneys at the back, and also our ovaries or testes, depending on whether male or female. These all talk to one another, and so it's really important to understand that if one area is out of sync, it will have a knock-on effect right throughout the body. And that's why it's really important when looking at anything to do with hormones and anything that may be off kilter with them, it's not just enough to just take a tablet, because what your body is telling you is that something about what you're doing isn't right for it. And it tends to be the way how we perceive our environment, it tends to be the food that we eat, it tends to be the how we treat our body, so the sleep that we allow it, the rest that we allow it, all of these things along with many others can make a massive, massive impact as to how our hormone system works. And one of the things that I see so often, myself included with this, is that we have a tendency to go, right, this is the life I want, body, now fit me, work for me, work for the lifestyle that I want, rather than us going, body, what do you need to function at your optimal performance? Okay, I will fit my life to work with how my body needs it to work. We've somehow become very detached from that way of thinking, and it's become much more about what we think we should be and who we think we should be and the life that we think we should be leading, and we're then trying to bring in our bodies into that, and lo and behold, it doesn't work overly successfully. And as women, we are sensitive, and I don't mean that in a disempowering way. I mean in terms of get to know yourself, get to know what is your truth, and get to know what's your body's truth. And actually we become so powerful when we're aligned with how our body functions at its optimal performance, because we do just that. We will be performing at our optimal performance rather than maybe at the 40 or 50 or 60% that we so often are functioning at. Okay. So I discussed about our endocrine system, and there are, like I say, throughout the body there are major glands. But what I want to focus on for today is to start looking at your uterus and your womb and our reproductive organs. This is so key for us to see what we look like inside. So this particular area is our womb, or uterus. The two names are used interchangeably. And this down here will be our vagina. This then starts to become our cervix. I hope you can see that okay. And this is the womb, where if we are to become pregnant, will be the area in which it sits. This particular lining around here becomes the lining that sheds when we have a period. And these arms that are coming off of here, they're called our fallopian tubes. And these sac-like things on each side, they're our ovaries. And what's really interesting, and I love this when I found out, our ovaries and our fallopian tubes aren't attached. When we ovulate, our ovaries shoot out an egg, and then they're caught by the arms of the fallopian tube that kind of acts like a hoover and sucks that egg up to get it travelling on its journey. Our bodies are amazing. I get really excited by them. So that's a little bit of a biology lesson. And these sacs, our ovaries, they're really exciting. That's where all the magic happens. This is the primary area where our hormones for our reproduction, for us as women, are made. They are dependent upon all the other signals that are going on within the body from all the other endocrine systems, all the other glands, but primarily this is where we produce hormones called estrogen and progesterone. These are the two hormones that I'm going to be discussing today, because they are probably, there's lots that are really key with reproduction, but it can get really bogged down very quickly in understanding all of them. And what I want to do is keep this at a nice top line level so that you've got some easy information to be able to take away. And today is more going to be just setting up for the next set of videos that are going to be coming out, that are going to be explaining how you can work with these hormones in greater depth. So, those little fun sacs, our little ovaries, as I'd said, they're responsible for producing. They do come from other parts of the body, but predominantly the estrogen and progesterone are produced within the ovaries. So what I want you to do is just have a look at this chart here. I hope you can see that okay. What's coming out of my camera is actually it's written backwards for some peculiar reason. But what I want you to see is that this yellow part of the chart and this green part of the chart. Now, the yellow is the hormone estrogen and the green is the hormone progesterone. So we're just focusing on this particular chart here. What you can see here is the level of the hormone, and what you see along there is the timeline. So this is timelined along a woman's average cycle, which is average 28 days. Now, what I will say is that a number of women don't have a classic 28-day cycle. A lot of women can have from a 20-day cycle right up to a 40-day cycle. They can all be very healthy. You just got to learn and understand what's your truth and what's your version of that. But most of the time, whenever you're looking at anything to do with your cycle, they will start to work on this classic 28-day cycle. And again, anything to do with the medical profession, they tend to work on that 28-day cycle too. Now, just to clarify for those who don't know, day 1 of your cycle is the first day of your bleed, and the last day of your cycle is the day just before you bleed. So that time period is generally around the 28-day mark. Now, our body is on this merry dance every month. Every single month we will have something like this happening. And the reason why it's so key to know is because what you can see that at this point the yellow is in charge, or the estrogen, and at this point the green is most, and that's your progesterone. And in traditional Chinese medicine, we classify that as estrogen dominant and progesterone dominant. And there are stages throughout the month that we are dominant in one of those hormones rather than the other. So coming back to this wonderful little chart, can you see this line that goes down the middle? That's our ovulation line. So there's roughly 14 days from day 1 of your cycle to day 14, which is when you ovulate, to 28 days. Now again, if you've got a cycle that's shorter than that or longer than that, your days, your timelines will be different. And that's absolutely fine. And it'll still give you a picture. Now, as you can see, we kind of start from this real baseline here. When we are on our period, we have very little hormone going on within us. Our estrogen and progesterone levels, if you take a look, they're really low. And what happens from day 1, that our estrogen, this yellow hormone, starts to build. And one of the characteristics with this building, if you think of estrogen being the stimulating hormone, is that our energy starts to rise. I don't know about you, but when I'm first bleeding, my energy is really, really low. I'm really tired, can't think clearly. All I want to do is grab a snuggly blanket, nice cup of maybe hot chocolate, something like that, put on a film and cuddle and bed down. And that's actually what we're designed to do. And after a few days, for me, it's generally about day 3 to 4, what starts to happen is I feel this energy come in. You start to feel good, you start to feel more positive, you start to feel generally really, really good. And it starts to, it continues to build until just before ovulation. And the estrogen's job is basically to get you laid. It's about attracting a mate. It's involved with getting this egg ready for ovulation. But what it starts to do is it reflects in your body of making you look the most attractive that you can, with your energy being at the peak that it can be at. And this is basically going, hi boys, come and fertilise my egg. And I have taken it back to basics, but we're talking about biology here. We're not talking about the women's rights or movements or anything like that. We're just talking about the biology that's going on within the body. So our estrogen is a building hormone, it's a stimulating hormone. And then after we ovulate, it drops. And women tend to feel a drop in their energy around ovulation and just afterwards. And that will be because the estrogen levels are starting to reduce. However, what you'll see is later on in the cycle, and quite often women go, oh, around ovulation, my energy starts to drop. But maybe a few days later or a week later, they start to feel that uplift again. And as you can see, it's because the estrogen's picking up again. And what tends to happen is that they start to feel that second wind almost within their monthly cycle. And then as they're coming into bleed, that estrogen will start to drop off again. The whole idea is that for us to bleed, the estrogen and the progesterone levels drop really low. Now, we've talked a lot about the estrogen, but here we have progesterone. So after we ovulate, we start to produce, you can see there's the ovulation line, something called progesterone. Now, progesterone is the hormone progestation. That's what it's for. It was, if our egg was to be fertilised, it's the hormone that would then carry on to nurture that gestation. And progesterone, if you think, is the opposite of estrogen, where that's very stimulating, progesterone is very calming. And it will have many effects within the body. It will start to really increase our thyroid function because our metabolism will start to increase, will start to become much faster, much higher. And we'll notice that quite often with start to feel a bit hotter, especially just before we come on our period when our progesterone is at its highest. The whole idea is that our bodies are then starting to turn into an incubator, basically. So if that egg was fertilised during ovulation, that we would then have our raised body temperature ready to continue to nurture that fertilised egg. And our progesterone levels, generally at this point, you're talking around sort of day 21 of your cycle, something like that, are still building, and we feel generally very, very stable. But then what starts to happen, if that egg hasn't been fertilised, then different signals are released within the body that start to symbolise, start to get the body to reduce the estrogen and reduce the level of progesterone, which is this last final phase of our cycle where our hormones start to tail off. And I know many women, this is the time period where women will be experiencing PMT. People can have it, women can have it at different times, but this is the classic time of when people experience PMT. And I've got to be honest, it kind of makes sense. When you look at these hormones and the fact that throughout the month we're generally very stable and we've got lots coming into us, they're tailing off. All these things that provide us stability, mental function, cognitive ability, make us feel good about ourselves, suddenly, where are they? They're gone. They're stopping. So it's not unusual for us to start feeling the effects of the reduction of these hormones. And this is also a reduction in energy, a reduction in mental faculties, a reduction in our mood, perhaps feeling lower, less energized. Our brain capacity throughout the month and how we function can move up to 25%. You know, this is significant. And so this is the reason why these changes are the reason why I'm saying we're not consistent creatures. As beings, we move throughout the month, especially if we're having a natural cycle. We move throughout the month and it changes. And therefore we need to, I believe, it's so helpful for us to understand that, to cut ourselves a break. The amount of women, myself included, have come from a place where we need to be the same. Day 1 of our cycle to day 14 of our cycle to day 21. And actually that's simply not true. We're working with different information going on within our body. We're working with different hormones. So when we actually take that into consideration, we can ride the waves of these hormones much more effectively. And we can reassure ourselves that when we are feeling really, really good, awesome, but also that it's completely normal and usual for us to be feeling lower or not as strong as we do at other parts of the month. And this is one of the big things that I see is women putting pressure on themselves that they should just crack on with it. Even if they're feeling absolutely rubbish, perhaps they're on their bleed, they're in pain, they're experiencing difficulty, and we're just like, no, let's crack on. And it's one of the worst things that you can do. So over the coming weeks, what I'm going to be doing is starting to tell you more about the seasons, because this relates to this cycle. There are actually 4 stages in here. So you've got the menstrual side, which is when you're bleeding, which starts on day 1 of your cycle. You've got the pre-ovulation phase, which is as you're building up. So you've got all of this build-up of energy. You've got the ovulation phase of your cycle, and then you've got the post-ovulation phase, which is actually quite often where we have PMT type symptoms. And I'm going to be talking you through and comparing that to seasons, because that's the best analogy that I've seen so far, and women tend to get that. It's much easier concept to be working with. So I'm going to be taking you through that over a series of week by week videos. It's generally going to be a Thursday that I release them. I'll let you know if there's going to be anything different. But in the meantime, what I would say before we get to the next video is just be aware this over the coming week of where you might be in your cycle. Do you know? Be aware as to how these hormones can start to play out, because they do make changes. And what I would suggest is just be aware. If your energy level starts to tail, your body is telling you something. Listen to it. So if you need to rest, I give you permission to rest. It's something that women, I classically see, we don't give ourselves permission to rest, and I don't know where that's come from. But right now, if between now and next time a video comes out, you feel the need to rest, do it. Go with it. If you're having your bleed, have a play around with resting, grabbing the blanket, going to ground for a day or 2. See how that feels. I'm going to be checking in on Facebook over the next couple of days. So by all means, after you've watched this video, do just drop me a line if you've got any questions or queries. And next week, just to set that up for you, I am going to be explaining a bit more about the seasons, and I'm going to be exploring the season of winter with you, which is our menstrual phase, and what your skills and abilities are going to be during that phase, and how you can support yourself. So if you have any questions or queries, do just drop me a line, and I will get back to you with some answers. I hope that you've enjoyed today's video. It's been great making it, and I look forward to seeing you in a week's time. Okay, much love. Take care. Bye.